Okay, we are live. I would like to welcome everybody to the Oracle Inn podcast. My name is Eric. I am joined by Kevin and Laquan as usual, and we have a special guest today, Ron. We're just bringing up, it's going to be a little random. We're going to talk about some recent events for about 20 minutes, and then after that, we're just going to open it up for discussion because, Ron, I know you have a pretty extensive background, and every time we talk, it just seems like you're just this world of knowledge that just has a lot to offer. So really happy to have you on.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Cool. So yeah, Kevin, Laquan, and Ron, what's going on lately? What's been going on the last 2 weeks?
I figured we'd go ahead and start off something small because I know Kevin wants to get into the budget, and I know that's going to take probably a little bit longer. So one of the most recent things, Trump refused to shake the German chancellor, who happened to be a female, hand during a meeting today. Was it today or it was
yesterday? I think it was yesterday. And so that's really big,
Why is that big? Why do we care?
Well, I mean, you look at every other handshake opportunity he's had with foreign leaders, and he won't let their hand go. He's got death grip, and you get someone who comes in, has the audacity to have a vagina, and he doesn't want to touch her hand, make eye contact, anything. So,
yeah, and I think just to go off of that, it speaks to that subservient status that women used to have, and a handshake almost in a sense is a to basically to say we're equals, or if we're not equal, you may be a little bit more powerful based off your handshake. I may be a little bit more powerful, but you still shake one another's hands in order to acknowledge one another. So yeah, I think that part of that is, he doesn't see her as his equal. He sees her as, as a woman, you're subservient to me.
Do you think he's just scared of women?
No, I just think he's very misogynistic, and I think he's very old school, very traditional, old school with his thought process. I mean, if you look at his body language during that photo op he's having, like he was kind of like looking down. He wouldn't acknowledge her presence, right? And the only thing that he really said was, make sure you take a great picture to send back to Germany. That was the really only dialogue once they came out of the meeting. And so it just kind of goes back to, grab the woman by her private part, when that came out, that interview. And just the way he's historically treated women, at least, when the cameras are on, so this really kind of showed like he pretty much doubled down on his stance. And it was very disrespectful. And I think any woman in the United States should be up in arms, whether you like Germany or not. Like, she's one of, she's part of the sisterhood, and you should be very angry about that. The fact that the most powerful man in this country didn't even want to shake her hand, even though you could hear the media saying you should shake her hand. She leaned over and said, should we shake hands? And he pretended like he didn't hear that. Total disrespect.
Yeah.
Yeah. He also met with the Irish prime minister, which if you watch it, it's funny as shit, man. Because the Irish prime minister is doing his best. The Irish are a great American group. He's talking about immigrant. He's, basically his whole thing was the Irish are immigrants. We're part of your country. Not only are we immigrants, but St. Patrick was an immigrant. And he just put the hooks in, and, Trump's standing over in the corner, just looking like a dumbass. So it's Europe's packing our lunch lately. So
let me ask you this though. So okay, when I say who cares, how is that really relevant to our lives? How does what happens out there with all that bullshit that's going on actually affect us?
Well, Eric, there is, and I'm not sure if you know this, but there is a global economy. The borders that we draw are, essentially lines. They're not actually on the ground. So we have to deal with one another throughout the globe. And when you take some of the more powerful countries like, Germany, or the UK, there was just a big snafu because they accused the British of spying or wiretapping Trump Tower as well. you're going out to these people who are allies that they follow us into war. They help us with, trade, everything else. And you're basically, saying, giving them a big fuck you on camera in front of the American people. So, why does it matter? Well, I mean, it matters because of our standing in the world. If nobody respects the U.S., then it's going to be real hard for the U.S. to be the U.S.
You have to think too, as well. Like, it applies to us and it affects us from a tourism standpoint too, as well. If we are sitting out there, pretty much showing our, in his case, pale white ass to them, and saying you can kiss every part of it and disrespecting them, how do you think the people of that country is going to feel when we're out there frequenting and patronizing, their businesses? There's no incentive to them want to treat us nice. It's like, well, look how you're treating us over there. Why the hell am I going to treat you nice here? There's resentment, and you have to think everybody's intellect level is on different planes, right? So some people, you have your radicals out there who might be like, you know what? I might want to do something to you if you come to my country. It's just, it puts a lot of people in harm's way. I know this is like maybe an extreme example, but for me being well-traveled out there, I'm telling you, there are certain places you go to. I'm not talking about Iraq or anything like that. There's certain places I've gone to, and I've had incidents, whether I was in Turkey, even right here in our backyard, Mexico, Dubai, different places you go to, they will treat you different. It wasn't just off my skin color. It was just the fact that they knew I was an American and they have a perception off what they see on TV, because we have to understand their perception of us is molded from the television and the radio. And so when they see us, they associate that to this. And it doesn't matter if I'm a great guy or not. It's like, no, you're an American.
No, I just pretend I'm Canadian when I'm anywhere, man.
I don't have that luxury.
I think the other big piece here is, the geopolitical implications of turning our backs almost in a sense on a country that is the country that is Germany. I think that if we look back at history, the Germans have fought a number of wars in Europe when they were opposed by other nations. Now, I don't want to get into all the details about it, but behind that, because, there are two sides to every story. One of the things that would be disastrous for the United States is if the Germans say, okay, well, the Americans are not our friends anymore, we're going to go back to the people that we sought refuge in during the Second World War, specifically, the Soviet Union at that time. And I know refuge may not be the best choice of words, but
Poland.
I'm sorry?
That's settled out to be Poland.
I still didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Is my mic not working? Can you guys hear me okay now?
I just heard, all I heard was Poland.
No, I was just saying that basically the resolve between Germany and Russia post World War II was modern day Poland, and was it like the Czech Republic is over there too?
Well, there was a lot of countries that was born out of the fall of the Third Reich, but prior to that, with the alliance of almost, I don't want to use the term necessity, but the alliance of necessity between the Russians and the Germans. The Germans were afraid of the Russians were afraid of the Germans. In order to mitigate that the risk that both countries had with one another, they signed an alliance which allowed the Germans to attack the French. So I think that, with what's going on in the Eurozone, in addition to what our president is doing, it could be also it could be seen as, it could lead the Germans to go out and seek friends. I think that's the best way to put it. And those friends may not necessarily be our friends. So in that old saying is, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. It could have disastrous effects.
Yeah, especially when you look at the whole Brexit thing, where Britain's seceding from the the EU. We're starting to see some serious geopolitical kind of changes in Europe, and if we're not careful, then you may get a bunch of people that are sick of the US's shit that all block together. and say, hey, you know, that's adorable that you guys still think that you can, you know, that you still think you're the leader of the free world, but we're not going to play nice anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's interesting about that too, though, is that it makes me wonder at what point will. So right now, it seems like the reason why we have so much power throughout the world is because of our military, and it's because we have contracts with them that say you will exclusively produce for the United States and no other country. Now, my concern is what happens if one of those mega conglomerate military weapons manufacturers has the right to say, well, I'm going to leave your market and just open it up for whoever wants anything. And now we're over heavily militarizing any country that can pony up the dough.
I've said this from the get-go, you know, especially when Trump came in. I said, these next 4 years is the most vulnerable time the U.S. will have, I feel, in a long time. Look, we're super vulnerable, only because of the way that Donald Trump, his rhetoric, what he's saying out there, because people are listening. And there's a lot of countries out there, and I've said this before, smaller countries who probably want to do harm to us, but don't have the capacity to do so.
Right.
But now, you know, you see like Russia, and you see a lot of other people out there too, you know, even, you know, say China, whoever, you know, they're like, you know what? Let me talk to them and see what's going on. Somebody's going to make a move. Somebody's going to want to make a move at some point, because Trump's going to run his mouth, and there's going to be a whole bunch of small countries out there that's going to want to support that big country that's going to want to, you know, do harm to us. And so, again, as you said a little while ago, Ron, my enemy's enemy is my friend. You know, I think the next 4 years, that's going to be the most important thing right there. You know, they're making moves behind the gates, you know, behind the closed doors. And Donald Trump is only fueling that fire right now. You know, and it's just, our military is only so strong.
And I definitely agree with you, Quan, but I would say that there is some logic to his madness. It doesn't seem like it. It doesn't sound like it. It doesn't appear that way. It seems that there's just absolute craziness. And let me put this out there. I am no fan of him or anything that he has done. But there is a strategy of unpredictability. So in the past, we have been very predictable in our responses to, you know, the actions that foreign nations have took. If you do this, this is going to be my response. It's very clear cut. It's very precise. So a nation knows that they could push up to that line without crossing it, and there will be no response. However, you know, with President Trump, and I don't even I'm going to call him Mr. Trump. With Mr. Trump, with being unpredictable, there is no. This is what the line is. This is what these are the things that we will do if you do this. There is none of that with him. I really don't care what you do. Just know I'm going to respond, and how I'm going to respond, you will never know. I'm just going to respond. I could respond by tweeting, or I could respond by launching a nuclear attack on you.
Yeah, which we're seeing that right now with the North Korea, right? Where they're essentially saying military, you know, strikes are possible given the regime, which, you know, the unpredictability piece is, I think, you know, there's a couple of things that are borne out in the last week or so that really show you how unpredictable this guy is. One was predictable, but I don't think anyone thought it would go this far. He issued an executive order on the 13th. So what is that, 5-6 days ago? Essentially looking at the efficiency of federal departments. But I have it up here. There's a line in here that really, I think, speaks to the heart of what it is he's trying to do here. It says the proposed plan shall include, as appropriate, recommendations to eliminate unnecessary agencies, components of agencies, and agency programs, and to merge functions. So what essentially he's saying is, you know, if we don't think that what you guys are doing is worthwhile, we're just going to cut it. And you look at, you know, who is in charge of these different agencies. You have, you know, Department of Education, right? You know, you got someone heading that department that wants to get rid of any schools that don't teach about, you know, the baby Jesus riding dinosaurs. You got the State Department run by an oil tycoon. You got, you know,
so let me ask you this. So what effect does big government have on inflation? Right, it's an added cost. If the value of that keeps increasing, then we technically pay more of whatever our earnings are. And how does that play into cost?
So, well, when it comes to the big government, costs, the biggest piece of it, I don't think is inflation. I think it's our national debt, right? We're something like $20 trillion in debt. And that's basically because we run deficits. Our budgets, we spend more than we bring in. So we then have to borrow the difference.
By the way, can anybody explain that to me? How do we owe so much to China? I never found that out.
We don't owe that much to China. We only owe them like $1 trillion.
Yeah,
So it's not, most of that
Yeah.
money is owed to us or companies or banks or, whatever. So it's, which I always thought was kind of funny, right? Like, I owe money to me. Okay.
Right.
But yeah, so that's the biggest piece. And what Trump is saying with his new budget, which I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at, what he's saying with his new budget is, oh, we're gonna cut everything, we're gonna get rid of all this wasteful government spending. But when you look at what's actually on his list, it's not the waste. So we spend more on our military than the next 7, 8 nations combined.
Hold on, can we qualify that though? Because when you say wasteful, I think that could apply across the board. Like,
Of
I'm sure
course.
there's a ton of money out there that is just getting wasted because people are not paying attention.
Sure. But when you look at what he's cutting, right? So from the State Department, he's cutting UN peacekeeping money, World Bank money for developing countries. He's cutting anything related to climate change, cutting 239.
Climate change thing bothers me.
Yeah, he's cutting the IRS. He's cutting 31% from the EPA, including 50
I don't have a problem with him
programs.
cutting the IRS now. I don't have a problem with that.
That's the one everyone's like,
Get rid of it. Yeah.
yeah.
Get rid of the IRS.
So 31% of the EPA, 50 programs, 3,200 jobs, including cutting enforcement and compliance, right? So essentially, why even have one at that point? Cutting NASA to 100 and the Earth Sciences and the Office of Education, 100% cutting arts and cultural, including National Endowment of the Arts, museums, libraries, PBS, NPR, and all of this while adding $52 billion to defense. We already of the global pot of money that is spent on defense, the U.S. contributes like 35% of that just by ourselves.
Do you think Donald Trump wants to open up our military to Russia?
What do you mean?
Well, it seems like they're healing that relationship between the United States and Russia. Like, we can say what we want about it, but it was definitely strained under Clinton and Obama. So the fact that he's stepping in and kind of saying like, all right, well, now that we're in charge, can we be cool? Like, in our country's not,
Well, I definitely don't think he will be able to do that. I think when we have that conversation, we have to look at what is in a nation's interest. And regardless of Donald Trump's admiration of Vladimir Putin and his wanting to be friends with the Russian leader, whatever he calls him, I think still Russia has interest that Donald Trump can have no influence on. Russia is. I'm sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to bring up that the thing that I'm referring to is that it's one thing for Trump to admire him, but I'm talking about Rex Tillerson. By him being Secretary of State, they reopened this mega huge oil deal with the retreating Arctic shelf. So there's all this, there's a shit ton of oil out there, like fresh oil. So that deal was put on pause with the sanctions that the U.S. had with Russia.
Yeah,
so
we're
now
not
that those
gonna do
sanctions are
Russia-
gone.
We're not going to do Russia any favors, right? We're going to do us favors. And Russia, I mean, so here's the thing. Just because Donald Trump really likes to cuddle with Putin in the Great White North of Siberia, while the snow leopards look on, it doesn't mean that our countries actually are getting along right now, because you see our congressional leaders are still basically putting the screws to Putin and putting the screws to Russia in general, saying we need to investigate this, So the relationship isn't really improving, at least the way I see it. It's
I just wonder if that was the
the
deal.
two heads are talking more, but the actual functional government isn't going to be any closer.
I think the best way to put it is that if the United States was, a snake, the head is doing one thing while the body is doing something else.
Well, but that's what I mean by the deal. I wonder if Donald Trump basically said, if you allow me to get this deal with Russia off the table, I'll give you whatever you want. You want less government? You want to slash, half the departments so they're in the executive branch? I'll do that. I'll do it all by executive order.
He was
Like,
going to do that
was the
anyways.
deal.
That was happening anyways.
What?
The cut in government. This was his plan. This was what he came in to do.
No, I know, but that's part of the deal is that he said, I will be the Republican president if when I get in that spot, you allow me to put Rex in place so that way they can get that deal off the ground.
I see what you're saying.
That's a lot of money. It was like $500 billion.
It's possible.
That's a huge deal, dude.
Yeah.
It would not be the first time.
Put the snap on that.
Yeah, no, it's I mean that gets a little tinfoil hat, but it's just because it sounds crazy doesn't mean it's not true.
No, dude, remember that documentary? We had that on a previous podcast. This guy did this whole background research that it was like this $500 billion deal that was stalled out because of the sanctions. And with that back online, dude,
Is it back
it's an
online?
interesting dynamic.
Or they still trying to
totally.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact that we just bought a bunch of Russian steel to finish the Keystone Pipeline, and it's the executive branch is definitely fondling the Russians at every chance they get.
And anybody who disagrees is leaving. They had like 4. What were they? They were like in the Department of the State for like 20, 30 years, and like 4 of them quit as soon as Tillerson took the reins. That was it. So they're clean. Dude, any objection to this deal, people are like turning a blind eye.
You have to
Like,
feel
I don't
like
wanna be a part of
everybody's.
that.
You have to feel everybody's compromised to a certain extent. You know what I'm saying? Like from the top down, it's just there's no transparency. And if you try to pierce that veil of secrecy, again, they push you out. You know what I'm saying? It's either you're in or you're out. Where do you stand? And if you stand against Donald, he will berate you, he will degrade you, through tweets or whatever. And
sue you.
Yeah, and he will force you to resign. He's not going to tell you you're fired. Well, except for that one attorney general, but
Except for the judge that was investigating him. Yeah, no, he's yeah. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about as far as current events is Hillary Clinton today said that she's ready to come out of the woods. And personally, I would like her to turn around, go back to the woods, and just stay there.
Now, my question for you is, what is she coming out of the woods on? I'm guessing this is from the election loss, or is it something else? Or
basically, she wants to help Americans find common. She still thinks of herself as the leader of the left, and that's what. So she's going to come out and condescend to everyone that didn't vote for her. So it's, I mean, the Democrats aren't doing themselves any favors right now.
she has no standing right now. No standing at all.
off of what you said, and I know I'm going to go in a different direction here, but I think it is fascinating that, when the elections were taking place, how everyone was saying that the Republican Party was done and it was going to fall apart and that there was no coming back for the Republican Party. But the exact thing happened to the Democratic Party when they were almost at the zenith. Almost at a zenith of their power. So, but that's just a thought I wanted to throw in there.
And one last thing too, because I know we're going to pivot out of this, but you know how Donald Trump fired all the attorney generals, and every president does that too as well. You know what I'm saying? But like just like the way it kind of happened, because there was like stories out there, a lot of big cases that are out there right now, and there was nobody to like really kind of step in. There was no contingency plan, no backup plan. Like, all right, who's going to transition in? Like, you just have all these cases, these huge cases. A lot of them, are like federal cases and stuff like that. That are just out there now, and the people that are going to come in, he's going to be able to dictate. They're going to be his people, right? So it's going to be like, all right, cool. Well, you know what? That file, I know that investigation was going. Just make that disappear. Like there's not enough attention on that too as well, because we all know every president comes in and fires all attorney generals and puts all their people in. But this right here, there's no replacement. It's just they're just sitting there right now, and so it's just that's scary too as well. So that's definitely something to think about.
Well, I think that speaks to that another tactic of uncertainty. Those cases now are in limbo. That's also that state of uncertainty. There's what's going to happen. Who knows? And it seems like he likes things that way. What's going to happen? Oh, who knows? I may do this. I may do that. It may be sunny. It may be cloudy. I may do that or go this way or turn left or turn right. So I think it just speaks to his character and who he is. As a leader, quote unquote leader, that he's going to continue to be unpredictable, and he's going to continue to foster uncertainty.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, man. I think he's definitely gonna continue doing what he's doing. That's not gonna change anytime soon.